Welcome everybody, this is Sue and Gareth with another podcast on Wellbeing Matters, and today our title is The Pain of Change.
Well done.
Have I got that right?
You haven't got that wrong. There you go, introducing it. How did you feel introducing it, Sue?
I feel good because I knew I was going to introduce it.
Yeah. No, we are going to talk about the pain of change. Our last episode was very popular. We did something about having a bad day.
We did.
And that got a lot of people listening to that. Or watching it on YouTube. Say hello to the guys on YouTube. There you go. We've got this on YouTube as well. If you prefer to visually intake your content. You got a lot, and I think it resonated with people because people do have bad days.
We do.
And I am sure this title will resonate with people, The Pain of Change, because I think a lot of people find pain or change painful.
Is it the change that's painful, or is it the resistance to the change that's painful?
Well, that's a very philosophical question. That's up there with if a tree falls down in a wood and no one's listening, does it still make a noise?
Sound?
Who knows? I think there's a lot of resistance to change. It's one of those things that one of the points that we talk about in our workshops, specifically around that if you cannot adapt to change, you need to be able to adapt to change to have a good quality of well-being. It's one thing we have to be able to manage well, because change is inevitable. It happens a lot. It happens regularly.
But you can just see people sometimes how they're so resistant to change in sometimes the things that they wear. Have you ever kind of seen anybody still dressed in sort of an 80s kind of gear, or with the shoulder pads and the heavy makeup, which is popular now anyway?
I think the fashion's a great example of change.
What were you laughing at the other day with your hair?
I don't know.
Oh, Gareth's mother used to perm his hair for him.
Oh, he used to perm it. Well, no, because back in the 1980s, there was a fashion that I was involved in, which is to have your hair permed at the back, not at the front, just on the back. And
is it called a mullet?
Well, it was a mullet. There was the longer hair at the back, and then to perm it. I don't know what it would call. I don't know what you would call it technically.
Did you have it going back on the top?
Yeah, it was kind of pulled back on the top as well. It was really one of those things that at the time it seemed really normal because everybody had it that way.
Oh, everybody wanted the hair that way.
And throughout that time, I used to have my hair permed. I always share the story about a friend of mine who had the same colour as me. He was a ginger nut, just like me, a redhead. But he had really straight hair. So my mother, and mine's quite wavy. It's not so much now as I've got older, but when I grow it longer, there's still a good lot of wave in it. And she used to perm my hair and perm his hair at the same time. And I'd wash mine and play with it, and it'd be permed for quite some time, and his would fall out immediately.
It's a stretch that's in the hair rather than it being straight. If you get hold of some people's hair, it's got a lot of stretch in it, and it's really weird being a retired hairdresser. It has you can't get any oomph into it. It's very strange.
Well, there you go. That's also informative. It's not just about change. Today we give you some tips on your hair.
If
your hair won't stretch, you can't have it permed. But it does show you how things do change. Fashion changes. If you only look around your city or the town you live in, that will have changed in the last few years. Definitely. I mean, if you look at Wakefield, where we live now, if you remember the time when we came here only 6 years ago when we moved in here, how even the view from our windows changed.
We used to have an old church.
A broken down, burnt old church.
Well, it wasn't burnt when we came, but then
no, but I understand for some reason they couldn't get planning permission to build the houses, so it burnt down, did the house. Oh,
the church.
The church. So all of a sudden the church got knocked down and new houses appeared. And I remember when that first happened, there was a little bit of me thought, I'm not very happy about this. The fact that we can see a playing field and we're going to have houses there. I'm not sure I like that. Again, a little bit of resistance to change there. But actually now I look out the window and it's just like it's...
Well, they are actually lovely houses, and they've kept the trees. I think it's the trees that you need. You need trees around you.
But if you were to walk around Wakefield now or 6 years ago, things have changed. Everything changes. And it's the one thing that we try as human beings sometimes to buck against. We buck against change because we like similarity. We like same and we like routine. Human beings like that.
We like same even though sometimes it's not working. I used to go through a phase, I don't do it anymore, where I used to change furniture around, and people who lived in the house with me didn't like it, especially if they were working away and they came back and the bed was in a different position, or the washing machine had turned round. They didn't like it.
People have a different approach to change. It is a different attitude towards it. The thing is, as humans, we're kind of set up to we've got two things as human beings which are very different to a lot of other animals, or mammals if you like. They all have an element of memory, but we have a very good memory. And the reason we have a memory is we remember things so we can we don't have to relearn things every day. So simple tasks like brushing your teeth or tying your shoelaces, these are tasks that we tend to learn at a very early age. And our mind is set up to do things the way we remember them. We have memory and we remember how to do something. If not, if you forgot something in the minute you'd done it, then you would have to relearn how to tie your shoelaces every day, relearn how to brush your teeth. Do you know why squirrels bury the nuts and bury so many of them?
Well, they're saving them for when they have a bit of a famine.
It's because they're not very good with the memory where they've left them, so they bury a lot of them so that they can potentially find something they've buried at some time in the future. I heard that. I don't know if it's exactly true, but it
wasn't
sounded
you
nice.
telling me that humans are the only beings that have a perception of death? That they have a life and it will one day end?
It was something we watched on a program the other night, and it was to do with it was that Goop thing by Cameron Diaz, that series on Netflix.
Cameron Diaz, you mean Gwyneth Paltrow?
Same thing. It's not the same thing. Yes, I meant Gwyneth Paltrow. I think it's true. We have this perception of death, and we fear death, and it's one of those things we fear, but it's inevitable for all of us. Everybody that's listening to this podcast, we're going to be not alone. Everybody listening, everybody alive now, at some point will not be. And I think we fear it, and then we have the same kind of fear, and it's almost that fear similar to a fear of death around change, because change can feel like that. It feels like something's ending, something's over. It feels final.
Yeah, but then something's beginning.
Well, there's different kinds of change. There's certain changes that we are forced into. Sometimes we're forced into change, and these things can be forced upon us that aren't in our control. So, for instance, I mean, you've never really had many jobs in your time, although you've worked for yourself. Pretty much that was your career. But I had a number of jobs, 2 or 3 of which I got finished from. 2 I got fired from for being drunk. That's another story. But the other 2 I got made redundant from, and that was a really strange experience because the change was forced upon me. And having a business and being an employer for 10, 12 years, I realised something that staff wanted. They wanted the freedom to be able to leave the job whenever they wanted to leave. So if they decided they wanted to leave, they had no problem saying, I'm leaving.
Bye.
That were okay. But when I had to make the decision to say, look, we no longer need you here, they used to get very, very upset. So we like to control things.
Yeah,
as humans, we're very controlling.
Control. We feel, and the reality is we don't actually control that.
Well, it's an illusion. We're given an illusion of many things around about control. Like sometimes if you go into a shop, you're given the illusion you've got a lot of choice, and you have. But in some of them, choices are made for you. The one thing that I find really interesting is that certainly in the last couple of years with the political landscape in the UK around Brexit and new political parties taking over because we had the general election, you start to see that we're given the illusion that our vote really makes a difference. And it does in some ways, and in other ways, it's a way of making people believe we can control the outcome of this country just by simply voting for a particular party.
Yeah, but then what happens when your party doesn't get voted?
Exactly. So it's an illusion. There's lots of illusions, and the thing around a lot of our choices in life is a lot of them aren't really made for us. This is a fact. If you listen to this podcast and you have a job, you work, or whether you're in a business, it doesn't matter, but you do something for some payment, and you don't like that. Let's assume you listen to this podcast tonight, and let's say it's a Wednesday evening, and you listen to this podcast, and you don't like your job or your business. Don't go in on Thursday. Don't go into work and just close your business down tomorrow. Can you do that? Of course you can.
In reality, you can.
Right. Most people won't. Why?
Because there'll be something from the business or job, i.e. money, that will allow them to do
But they can change.
Other things.
That change might be painful though, because you might then have to wake up on Thursday morning or Friday and realise you've got no income. You might realise that you've broken a contract and somebody's chasing you legally. A number of things could happen, but you have more choices than you think. And then in other ways, we're given some choices that aren't really choices that we have to make. The thing about change for me, and why I thought it was important to talk about it on this podcast, is firstly, and I've already mentioned it, we as Better 27 believe that in order to have a good experience of well-being, have that health, happiness and comfortableness in life that I believe we all should have, you have to be able to navigate change and handle change when it happens. And the other reason I wanted to talk about change is I think it's the one thing that holds people back is that fear of change from doing something that's going to be much better in the future because of the pain of the change now. So, let's talk about something we both have a little bit of experience of here, and something we're both going through, and that's very relevant. Neither of us drink alcohol. Nobody in our household drinks alcohol. Me and you don't drink, do we?
No.
Now, we've both stopped drinking.
Mm-hmm.
We've both stopped drinking for different reasons.
Yeah.
So, I stopped drinking in 2014, 20th of July, 5 p.m. You stopped drinking the 19th
of July, 2019.
Right. I stopped because I recognised on that day that if I continued to drink like I was drinking, it was going to kill me. This was a fact. My body was starting to deteriorate. I was starting to, because I know a lot about alcohol addiction. And although I was drinking in 2014, prior to that, I had a lot of sobriety. I'd worked in rehab clinics. So I did know what the symptoms were of somebody coming to a bit of a demise through alcohol, and I was recognising them in myself. So I stopped because I realised if I didn't stop, I was going to die, and I did not want to die. That was my reason for stopping. That was my reason to change. Yours was not the same, was it?
No, mine... It was in... I always admire people that don't drink. And I always used to think, I wish I didn't drink. Like, okay then, we'll do it. And at the back of my mind was the fear that I won't be able to do it. And it sounds... When I say it now, it sounds daft. It's like, well, if you have a go and you don't do it, so what? Because you don't tell people you've stopped drinking. I still say to my family, I'm not drinking at the moment. Whereas strangers, I'll say I don't drink. The thought of not drinking ever there was fear in saying that. And then, of course, we spoke about it and I realised I have a choice to drink whenever I want. If I want to have a drink tomorrow, I can have one. I choose not to, and it makes it a lot more comfortable. It makes it a lot easier.
You changed because you felt it was ready. You're ready to change. In fact, you've told me before you got bored.
I was bored, and also I'd changed such a lot. I've been practicing yoga for many, many years. I've only been teaching for 4, so I was getting deeper into yoga practice, and then came the plant-based diet and other things, and it felt incongruent to be drinking. And I have to admit, I'm not one of those people that can have the odd drink. I kind of don't see the point in it. It was either getting together with my sisters, some family affair, going out with my daughter at Christmas shopping. There'd be a few drinks. There would not be one drink. So I did realise it was either all or nothing. And I got bored. It was one day we were in Ibiza and I was drinking cold beer at 3:00 in the afternoon, and I thought, I don't do this at home. Why am I doing it now? And I said to you, I'm bored of drinking. I don't want to drink the rest of the holiday, so don't buy me any. And that was the end of the conversation. You never did.
Never did.
And when I came back, I thought, I've done 10 days. What about a month? And then, of course, I had a much bigger goal then. I had 100 days because I knew that would take me over Christmas.
Yeah, we went over Christmas.
Or not far away from Christmas. So, of course, 100 days becomes 200 days. And once you get to 200 days, you're downhill to a year. So I think now I'm about 250 days, probably a little bit more. And the thought of having a drink now is letting myself down. It's like undo it, even though you won't be undoing it. I feel that I've done such a long period. This is the longest period of time I've ever done since I started drinking. And it, my health has benefited. My yoga practice is a lot better. Because the thing is about yoga, we do a lot of balancing and everything's quite precise and you listen to your body. So even a couple of glasses of wine the day before a yoga class or 2 days before affected my balance. I wasn't rolling about all over the floor, but I could feel that I wasn't quite as sharp. So being healthy, there's no room for alcohol. There just isn't. And you can't sugarcoat it and say, oh, have an occasional drink. There's no room for alcohol in a healthy lifestyle. And I know some people listening say, oh, well, I have a drink at Christmas and I have a drink on my birthday. Well, good.
Well, the people who drink on the birthday and the people that drink at Christmas, and only then times are very few and far between. Majority of people drink too much. They know they drink too much, but they fear change. They fear saying, I don't want to do that no more. I have to feel change. For 2 reasons. One is they'll fear that it's difficult.
which was my
which
fear.
was your fear. And there's also something else you said earlier, which is a little bit interesting and very relevant, is how you say one thing to your sisters and your family and to somebody else, because we also fear what the people around us will make of the change we are going to take on in his life.
And there was kind of a little bit of... every year I go Christmas shopping with my daughter. We have a day in town. We buy Christmas shit and we try clothes on and we have cocktails and we have something to eat. And I felt a bit of disappointment that day because some of it comes from other people. Now, the good thing was she understood I was not drinking and it wasn't mentioned. It was like, we're not going for a drink. She had a drink. She had a glass of wine with something to eat. But there was no expectation from her for me to have a drink. But you don't always get that. And you looked upon as boring. You looked upon as a bit weird. And people don't like it.
Well, we're picking. We talked around drinking there for a few minutes, and realistically, that the podcast is about change, but that's a real indication of the same kind of feelings and feedback you might get with anything you change in your life, because change is needed, and the reason we change anything is because the way we did it before maybe isn't working anymore. That could be the reason for it. If we talked earlier about fashion in the 80s and how haircuts and things have changed, the reality is fashions don't change because they need to change. Fashions change because people want to sell you some new shit that's slightly different.
But everything changes. Nothing stays
the point
static.
I'm making is you have two different things in life that change. You have things that change and generally change because things around you, like the way that the city looks, changes because it needs to get more upmarket. Things had to change. We had to build more buildings. And them changes and things like fashion and maybe even music, it changes because that's what it does. That's part of that thing. Fashion does change. That's why fashion is fashion. Music changes and new music comes along because that's what's dictated to in that industry. Within your own life and your own change, sometimes change can be something you have to bring in because something isn't working. I suppose the point I'm trying to make is the jeans I wore in the 1980s would still be jeans now and they would still do the same job. They would cover my legs up and keep me warm. They would just look a different cut. So that wasn't a change because it was needed. It was a change because it changed because it was fashion.
But when you think of nature and the planet we live on, that's always evolving and changing. So why would we not be part of that?
Well, we are part of that. We often say this. People misunderstand. They'll say things like, I'm going into nature. Well, you are already in nature. You are nature. You're part of it. You're just another mammal amongst all the other mammals on the planet. The thing with change is if you recognise something isn't working in your life, change is required. And this is what people fear. They fear the fact that something's not working. I need to change it. It could fear the fear that actually...
It's a fear of failure.
That could be one of the reasons. The other thing as well is don't underestimate the power of your social circle and the people around you for holding you back from change. Fear that we might not be part of the crowd anymore. I've had a bit more experience not drinking than you, and although I stopped drinking in 2014, that was the second time. Since 1998, I've had the best part now of 17 years worth of sobriety. There were a couple of years in that time when I've drank, I could probably, but realistically, such a huge amount of time I haven't drank, to the point now that nobody even recognises, nobody would know me now that knew me when I was drinking. Apart from a couple of my family and maybe a couple of friends that still know me. So the expectation when I go out is they don't expect me to, because I don't drink.
That's interesting, because a good friend of mine, Graham, who is my hairdresser, he has the same feeling. He talks in his head about stopping drinking, but as a single man living alone, the pub is his social life. Well, it's where he goes to meet friends and the drinking.
And I get that, but this is again where we have to not just understand change, we have to understand the dumb shit excuse we give ourselves. I have been into many pubs in the last 20 years, many. It's not a place I'm unfamiliar with. And I've never drank at all because there's funny thing is they sell other things than alcohol.
But why did you go into a pub?
Because it's part of, I might go there for a meal, I was with somebody. Yeah. So change is something that people fear because they might not be able to do it. And secondly, it's a step away from the norm.
Me and you don't go to a pub.
We go for meals. We've go to restaurants. We have been to pubs that are restaurants. So it's not
that we never
go.
Let's go for a drink on a Saturday.
Because why would you?
Exactly. So
I'm going to wrote down the drink talk. Actually, this is not a drinking podcast to talk about drinking. What I will say is this, right? Most people's life revolves around going out, getting drunk, drinking or doing something. And it's a big problem in the UK. It's becoming an increasingly bigger problem because people have made it part of our, celebrations or commiserations somewhere along the line alcohol is involved. And it's not necessary. I've never been a big person for pushing my views on alcohol with anybody because they're my own personal views. But, just for the sake of closing this section off, I don't think anybody is required. I don't think you need to drink. I think your life is much better without it. And I'm telling you that from experience. And it's all right saying, you know that because you're an alcoholic. No, actually, an alcoholic is somebody who has a problem with drink. Now I don't have a drink. I don't class myself as alcoholic anymore because I don't drink. It's not an issue that will cross my path because I don't do it. But what I will say is I've realised that the other side of that, what I thought was painful change, becomes something that is much better for me. And that's the thing that I want to try to get people to understand. There is some feelings of pain sometimes for changing. When you start a new exercise regime, when you start a new job, when you start a new relationship, it's not pain as much as uncomfortable feelings of nervousness, of maybe fear of the unknown. These are inevitable with any change. Even when you get a new car and you change your car.
Do you think it's because there's some part of you that laments over what's gone?
No, because we've got used to the same old, same old.
But when you change your car and you get this brand new shiny car, you love your car, but sometimes you hanker back to the other car.
Well, what you
remember bits about it that you like.
No, you'll remember things that are missing because we're like that. Do you know the biggest change I had talking about cars? I used to drive Peugeots. I sold Peugeot when I was younger as a car salesman. I loved Peugeot cars. And the one thing about Peugeot cars is they were always very highly spec'd. So you could buy a fairly cheap Peugeot, but it would have electric windows, it'd have heated seats, you could move the mirrors around and all that. And then I bought an Audi, which, in the scheme of cars, in the hierarchy of cars, an Audi is a far better car. It's a much more kind of higher prestige motor car than a Peugeot. But when I got in my Audi, and I'd got away with, I'm driving an Audi, and that kind of drifted away, I thought, why don't my seats move electrically? Why can't I press a button and this happen? Why don't I have that digital thing on my dashboard? Why can't I do that? So we lament sometimes what's missing. And there's a side of that which is a little bit of, can be, if you're not careful, a bit of ungratefulness. Hang on, that was nice, you had it, now you're into something else. If you're not going to change something, you're going to end up doing something which people don't even realise. If you don't change and keep moving forward, you move back. You've talked about nature. There's something very significant in nature. It
never stands still.
If it's not growing,
it's dying.
It's dying. You can't stay in the same place. Because even if you don't change a thing, the world around you will change. And that's why you do get people still walking around in 1980s clothing. Because the world has changed, they haven't. And if they're comfortable,
loved that time in their life.
Maybe. There could be a number of reasons why people don't change.
That guy who has his house decorated as Christmas all the time.
Yeah.
Because he loves Christmas. But then you kind of think, if it was Christmas every day in the house, after a while it wouldn't be the same.
No, it wouldn't be the same. We like familiarity, but change is inevitable, and managing that change is difficult sometimes. But it doesn't have to be if you start to look at change with what it can be, which is what's the potential this change brings. We're well into the year now, we're into March, and I've just started going back to the gym. Second session today, very short one today, I wasn't there very long, but I was there on Monday, and I'll be there on Friday. And the reason I always had the intention to go back to the gym in March was for a very simple reason. Up to March, the gym is full of people. It's all full of people who have got the membership, and they've all got
into... that's not an excuse, Gareth?
What do you mean? For me?
Yeah.
Not at all an excuse. Look, you've been very clever there. I like it. But no, the reason is...
I go to the gym.
You went. Mm-hmm. I set my goals at the start of this year that I needed to do more running. The start of last year, I did not run effectively in January, February or March. And because of that, it made the target I had last year for my running very difficult to achieve. I did do it, but it involved doing a lot of running in September, October, July, and all that kind of time.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You are one of those people that just talk about things for a long, long time. And sometimes you'll try it and you don't really get into it. But then all of a sudden, it's like you've been running on and off for a few years and you hated it and you didn't get into it. What was it that changed you from that into somebody that went out every single day?
Well, you're experimenting. What I believe you have to do is you can't do one thing and try it once and say you've failed or succeeded at that. That's not how it works. So this year, I was adamant that this year I didn't want to happen what last year. Last year was a mistake. The way I did run last year was a mistake. I did a lot of miles. I did over 1,000 miles, but I did the majority of those miles in 6 months. The lion's share of them anyway. I think I did about 200 or 300 miles halfway through a year. And that's just 700 the last year, after the year. I recognise this year something had to change for that not to happen again. So I recognise change was necessary because it's important to me to be able to run. And there's reasons for it. It's to do with health and fitness. It's to do with walking. That's not that important. What is important is I realised I had to change what I did last year. So this year on my mind, I thought, what can I change this year? Right, if you do it in January and February, then you're going to and get a good base there. It makes the rest of the year much more manageable. So I thought if I do January and February, that's the time it will be busiest at the gym because I am very conscious I want to do some weight training this year. Go back to the gym in March. That was always the plan. It was always in my mind. And the reason I talk about things and try them and test them is because I want to find a way that works for me. The hardest thing with personal development, in full stop, is finding what works for you. There's a lot of people will dispense advice, and this is what we have to be careful of at Better 24/7 of saying this is the way. There is no way. There are many ways. It's the way that's right for you. As long as you're not using that it's my way to avoid difficult stuff. So, I went out and I tried running and I tried this way and that didn't work. But I kept realising it was important to me. Because what did need to change for me about 3 years ago is I needed to become much fitter than I actually was. And I knew there was only 2 or 3 ways I could do that realistically. And things that I could do consistently. So my kind of goal this year has been to become more consistent. And that kind of started back in the last year. Consistency is important. So when something requires doing, you can have 10 or 20 attempts at something to get it right. More. You know, there's that famous thing about Thomas Edison. How many times did he try to make the light bulb?
A lot.
Yeah. And he said to him, everyone said, well, you failed. He said, no, he said, I've found another way, it won't work. What a wonderful way to look at something. He didn't say, yeah, I failed, whatever many hundreds times or whatever it was. He said, yes, I've not failed, actually. I found another way that it won't work. And it's perception. And a lot of perception around change needs to be something that people understand because your perception of change is what's either holding you back or making change easy for you. Because you're quite comfortable with change.
Yes, I am.
And I'm comfortable now with change. And the reason we're comfortable with change is we've been doing this personal development for a lot of years. I worked out the other day, I did something on my old website, on my garethboot.com website. And I was doing some copy at the front and I said that I've been involved with personal development, studying it or practicing it for over 30 years. 30 years. Which is, consider I'm 50 this year, is a big chunk of my life. And even now, we still have to work to keep moving forward. And the problem with people around change, I think one of the biggest challenges they face is they want it to happen fast and they want it to happen easy and they want it to be not be painful. And that's not always possible. But
sometimes we fear it's going to be hard and it's going to be painful, which stops us. And the reality is it's not that hard or that painful.
But that's the illusion. That's the illusion we have to get people to understand. That's why I want this podcast. I want this podcast to be a call to action for anybody that's sat there right now who's been wanting to change something but fears the change. Because what you'll find out when you've done it, it weren't as big and bad and scary as you first thought. I don't know whether, because this is the second version of the podcast there, because we got disturbed in our first one. So I don't know if we mentioned this already, or we mentioned in the previous recording we had to scratch and do again, about the zip wire in Wales. You said
we were talking about excitement and fear.
Because excitement and fear are very similar.
But when I said to you, do you want to do the zip wire? Everybody was doing the zip wire. You felt behooved to join in, even though nobody expected you to join in. I think it was when I said my 75-year-old mother was doing it. There was something in you that made you join up, and you didn't want to, and you spent quite a few weeks getting quite bothered about it.
I got wound up about it. The thing is, I recognise something, just to give the listeners or the watchers on YouTube the lowdown on this. I've got a fear of heights. I don't particularly like going up anything high, and the idea of going on kind of thrill-seeker rides, just not the thing I do. Never have done. I don't have any fun or enjoyment in them. So the thought of going up a mountain in Wales and then sliding down that mountain on a zip wire, which is basically me attached to a piece of wire by a thread, was not
But
something
why
that
did
filled-
you agree?
Because in the end, I realised something, that belief I had, that way of thinking about fear of heights was holding me back. Now, prior to that, over the last couple of times we've been away to cities, I think we went to Venice. We went this year, but also we went a few years ago. And I've made it in my way now when I go to places with taller buildings to start to go up those buildings.
I think you were disappointed you couldn't go up the Eiffel Tower.
A little bit, but we might go to Paris again and next time might be different. So I'm always recognising where I need to be pushing myself and what I need to be changing, whether that be an action that I do, whether that I have to change something, some behaviour, or I have to change some way of thinking. So because I'm always aware of where I need to be, and I'm aware that change is required to get there, I'm comfortable more with change now. But that thing about the zip wire was full of fear. I feared it. Now, the reality was, the minute that I let go of the top of the mountain and start coming down, I loved every second of it. So the fear of change was not then backed up by the reality. The reality was it was a really enjoyable experience. One that I would have missed out on, in fairness, if I'd have probably had my own way. I could have said, no, I'm not going to do that. Then something else happens. And this is how our brains work. So really, really interesting, this. My brain that tries to protect me, because your brain and your mind does that, it tries to protect you, tries to protect anybody listening to this, trying to protect you. So it'll say things like, don't do that, it's dangerous, it's scary. And people say, it's not, and it talks you into doing that. And it would have had me at the bottom of that thing saying, well done, you've kept yourself safe, till everybody had come down. Then guess what the daft brain would have said to me? You're a loser, son.
You've missed out.
You're a loser, you're a coward.
And we'd have been all talking about how exciting it was and going over it.
So
all.
the reality is, some of this stuff that goes on in our mind is where we have to start to rehash our thinking. Change can be painful and it can be uncomfortable. But if it's something you're going through, you only have to feel that pain and go through it once. When you stopped drinking, you did not have any real adverse effects. You just stopped drinking and it was okay. When I stopped drinking, I went through 4 to 5 days of serious detox, which is very nasty.
I remember.
Yeah, and there was the DTs, things crawling on me and things trying to eat me in bed. Very painful 3 or 4 days. Now, that was inevitable because I had to change, and that was part of that particular change process. But here's the kicker. If I don't drink again, I ain't never going to do that again.
Nah.
So your change and the pain that is involved sometimes with change can be something that's short-lived, and then you go through it. And you've got to keep your eye on what's the other side of change.
You have, and I'm not going to keep going on about drinking, but for food or anything, I always look at the benefits of that change, which always outweigh any negative, if there is any negative. And sometimes if I get a little bit triggered or pulled off to one side, I bring myself back to the positives, of which there are lots. So then you stay on purpose, and I think if you write down what it is you want to achieve and all the reasons why, so it's quite ingrained, rather than just saying, I want to do this in 5 years' time, work it back and how that looks going forward, you stay on track quite easy.
Well, your why is massive. Your why is huge. A big why will get you to do many, many things. This is why if your why for losing weight is I'm off on holiday and I want to look better in a swimsuit, that's not a bad why. I get that. But the problem is then,
permanent.
But it's not permanent, because when you come back from your holiday, then what? Then you go back to your old way of behaviour. The reason I was kind of moved to do this podcast today was we've been working recently with kids and different setups around groups. You've been at yoga classes, and I've been experiencing some things at the school and at the community centre, which has kind of led me to believe that even at a very young age, kids are resistant to change. Even if you give them the evidence of what the current behaviour will do for them and the current actions will get them, they still prefer to stay where they are.
But is that because they don't have the wisdom or the greater knowledge of the world in general?
I think it's we've got to a stage now where people are very good at staying in the same place and justifying it.
Because I found this with children and food. Everybody's children. You bring them up when they're babies, they get to toddlers, you introduce lots of different foods, it's easy peasy, they eat anything. They'll eat sprouts, they'll eat anything. 4 years old, 5 years old, not so much. Once it's time to start to get to 7 and 8, they start to dislike things they know nothing about. food-wise, and it becomes a bit of an issue. And I've seen it so many times with different
that
children.
ties in with what you were saying, that you first of all, almost in what you had the fear of that you couldn't maybe do what you thought you were going to change. And then secondly, maybe we have that fear around the people around us and our peer group. And for kids especially, when you get to that age, 8s, 9s, 10s, when you're starting to get into sort of senior school, you're massively swayed by the people around you, both in how you look and the fashion you wear and how you behave and what you say. So if you think about it, if somebody... This came up yesterday. We were cooking some food, and some people, when I said, we're cooking this, I don't like that. Or have you ever tried it? No, I just don't like it. I don't like that. I don't like this.
Yeah, that's what they do, kids.
And there was an element of frustration with me, and I thought, and over the course of the cooking session, we made curry, aubergine curry. It was very nice. Everybody's tried it. Everybody liked it because I made the change comfortable for them, and I brought them into it because the environment that they were in there was supportive of making that change. If they'd have been sat there with 5 more of their friends and I wasn't in that room to say anything, none of them would have eaten it. Yeah,
I wonder if once they get to a certain age, the fear kicks in.
Fear kicks... When
the toddlers and that, they don't really
We've
fear
talked about the
anything.
fear of death. People fear death.
You see, I don't know if I agree with that.
You may not, but I'm telling you now, most people
I can't be
have a
the
fear
only
of death.
person.
Okay, most people fear death. It's a fear. But the other thing people fear is not being part of a group or being ostracised, because that feels like death.
Till you get older.
And there's a reason for it. We remember, although we think we are fairly, switched on modern beings, we still carry a lot of DNA from many, many millennia ago, when as a human being, the only way you survived was to be part of a tribe. That tribe supported you. That tribe kept you safe. The numbers in that tribe was what made that tribe strong. And the biggest fear in that tribe was if you were thrown out. You're not part of the tribe anymore. And if you're not part of the tribe, you've got to fend for yourself, and that's very difficult. And it's the same thing happening now. People get into groups of people follow behaviours that maybe they don't agree with because they want to be part of the tribe.
But yeah, we did that as kids, but as you get older, that goes away.
Goes away a little bit. It's still with a lot of people. I suppose what I mentioned this, alluded to a little bit earlier, because we've been involved with personal development for a while, we have come a long way on this journey. We're a lot more enlightened than some people are. And that's not saying they're bad. It's just we've done more work to get to this point. We've been at this longer. And it's something you learn through personal development that you don't know when you first come into it. So try to imagine this now. You've got somebody who wants to make a significant change. They don't know anything about self-development. They've never had any experience from it or any experience doing it. How scary must it be for them just to make even simple changes? Because what we have learned through our qualifications, through our study, through our practice, is that change is something you've got to go through. It's a process. You can make change easier by the way we think, by the actions we take, by not doing too much too fast. That's why the gym thing works. People go to gym and then they go there and they do it too quick. They want to be too fat, too fit, too fast, and they hurt themselves. Then they get bored. They haven't made it sustainable. So back to my running. I have, in the last couple of months, done quite a lot of running. But my target every day is only to do 3 miles. And bear in mind, it's not just 3 miles running, it's 3 miles moving. So I can walk 3 miles. And I can walk 3 miles without even thinking about it. I can run 3 miles now without thinking about it. But because I broke it down into small bite-sized pieces, and because I've given myself 12 months to do this, the change, which is becoming fitter, is going to happen in a much more comfortable and controlled way. There is still some pain around it. There's still a little bit of, some mornings I just think, I've had enough of this. But I have to keep pushing through.
I'm joining a running club, as you know.
You are joining a running club. Tell us about that. Share it with the group, Susan.
Okay. I hate running. I love hiking. I love climbing up hills. I like the gym. I love my yoga. Running, nah. I think when I was younger, I got shin splints when I started to run on pavements, and it put me off, and getting out of breath. And in the winter, you have to go out with layers on, and after 5 minutes, you're hot and sweaty. You have to take it off again. It's just not my thing. However, I've become aware that I don't really do any work on my aerobic capacity. So I did say I would go out running, and a couple of mornings this year, I've gone out, and I can run a mile without stopping. I still don't like it. Anyway, anywho, My daughter asked me if I wanted to join a running club. It's for beginners. It's not a club, it's a course, 8-week course, something like that, at the local park. So I initially agreed to support her, to go with her. That's why I initially agreed. But then when I sat and thought about it, I thought, well, it can't do me any harm, and it may be a way of me getting into running coming from a different approach, because it's a beginner's running group, and we're going to learn how to pace and breathe, all the things I don't know about running. So I'm quite looking forward to it now. It's only once a week, and I may get the running bug, who knows.
It's interesting what you said at the start of that little bit of information you gave everybody, is you said, I hate running, I don't like running. So you see, again, sometimes our resistance to change comes from our beliefs. You believe you hate running.
When I was a kid and we used to do sports day athletics, I used to run as fast as I could. I'm not kidding, as fast as my little legs would take me. And when I was younger, I was always a fast runner. But what happened with me is I'm not very tall. I've got quite short legs. So as we were getting up to junior school and then senior school, people were growing. So I would run as if I was having to save my life, and people started to sail past me. And I wonder if it's something to do with that, because no matter how fast or how hard I tried, I couldn't win the race. I don't even think I could get second or third. I was just behind.
But again, you have to set up your change with something that's going to be easy for you to achieve, or at least potentially achievable. So what I would say, if I was working with you, I would say, okay, so you didn't run because you weren't the fastest. What if your approach was not to be the fastest? What if your approach was to be the most consistent?
I get that, but at sports day, when you're a child...
But again, this is bred into us. So again, you fear there now.
So
all this stuff, when it comes to changing, we're not just dealing with the fact that some of us friends might give us some stick, or us family. We're also dealing with deep-rooted, in many cases, many years deep-rooted beliefs. So change is something that once you recognise that change is not always as painful as you will understand. And to be a realist here, any significant change is going to feel uncomfortable. But you can't avoid that. But you can mitigate the amount of pain. Is mitigate the right word?
I think so.
We'll use that word anyway. Or dilute the amount of uncomfortableness and pain by making what you want to change happen in a more controlled way. I woke up to the news this morning. I did a podcast before Christmas with a young man called Dan Woods. Remember?
I do.
I do remember Dan Woods, don't you? And that was on my Gareth Boot podcast, and he had cancer, and he was battling with cancer. I woke up this morning to find out Dan passed away last night at 7:00, and it was very sad news. And I only met him twice, but what a lovely man. And all I could think about this morning was his wife. He's not got any children, but he's got a mum and dad, and he's got a wife. They've not been married a great deal of time, and they were only very young. He was only in his 30s. Now, that lady's waking up this morning
to a completely different reality.
And that change has been forced upon her. Now, although she probably knew this was coming, and that might help her to some degree, she's got to deal with some change now, and that change will be uncomfortable, and I am very sure emotionally painful. But she will have to get through that. She has no option. And she will know that. I know she's, from what I understand of her, she's a very switched on young lady, and you know, I'm sure it will never be easy for her, or won't be easy for her, but she will get through it. You know, I woke up one Sunday morning to find out my dad had died. You know, I had to deal with that change within 5 minutes. Prior to that, I've got a great time. Everything's happy. Looking forward to Christmas. 5 minutes later, your dad's died. Oh dear, that's change thrown upon you. Now, you said this about resistance to change. If we resist what is actually what is, so if I had resisted that fact and said, "Oh, my dad isn't dead," and you know, he isn't, and tried to resist it, I had to accept it, and to accept that change was painful. But it made for me the process of getting through that painful time much easier in many ways, because it went quicker. I didn't hold on to anything. I didn't have any regrets or anything like that. So some change is forced upon us. Some change is a choice. The choices that we make affect our life. So you've got to be looking at saying, right, why would I not want to change this for the better? So like with them kids around there yesterday, I'm thinking, why would you not even consider trying this? Or why, you know, what one person said which staggered me. And maybe I'm a very naive person with this. They said, well, and I said something about, yeah, but if you eat this way, it's better for you and you'll save money. Yeah, but I don't care. I'm going to eat this other stuff anyway. And I just thought, how naive do you sound right now?
I questioned a member of my family. We used to sometimes go out to eat, and he always chose the same dish. Always. And people used to say to him, why don't you try something different? So I said to him, why do you have the same dish? And he said, because if I order something else, it might not be as good. So I said, what if you order something else and it's better? And he said, oh, I hadn't thought of that. But we resist change because we have a negative connotation that it's going to be worse or not as good as what we've got now.
You know, I've learned something.
Today?
Yeah, no, I learned something a long time ago. Take away sometimes the stuff that's forced upon us. All change is for the better. And I know we get people saying in the good old days and talk about, well, it's better now, it used to be better in the past. All change is for the better. Even if initially it doesn't feel that way, it pushes into something else.
Just finishing my tea.
Are you finishing your tea? Mm. We haven't mentioned this on this podcast. I'm going to mention what Sue's drinking because I thought it was very amusing this morning. Sue's drinking tea. She's actually drinking Pucker Supreme Matcha Green Organic Tea.
Why would you not?
And I don't know why you drink it until you read it, what were on the back to me upstairs when you were making the cup of tea. And when you read it, I thought, ooh. So this involves...
Did you fancy some?
This involves having, in the ingredients are, Sancha green tea, or Sencha green tea we'll call it, Pinho Wild Jade green tea, Indian green tea, and matcha, in brackets, Juju Island Emerald. Amazing. I thought I'd mention that because it made me laugh upstairs, and I thought, I was saying that in a great way of, oh, you'd want to drink that just by listening to it.
You would?
All changes for the better. Sometimes it might take a long time for you to look back and realise the change was for the better, because sometimes what's good now becomes bad in the future, what's bad now becomes good in the future.
But when we say all changes for the best, does that depend on how you're looking at it?
I'm staggered at the moment, the amount of people in this country, the UK, I see that are incredibly sick. Some of them don't even know it. They look miserable, they look out of shape, they look to have no life in them. It's staggering, and it's becoming a big thing. It's become a bigger deal since we started to focus on what we're doing now, well-being.
It seems to be an epidemic.
Because I look at this barometer now of what does well-being look like? What does a comfortable, happy, healthy person look like? And I've got an image of what that is. And it's nothing extreme. We're not talking about somebody here with a six-pack who can run 1,000 miles, who is sat in a house that's got 15 cars outside. I'm talking about what is a base level of what well-being should be in a country like the UK, based on our health system, our access to clean water and food, and our access to some element of social help if we're in difficulty. And I think the bar is quite low as to what that can be. It's not very high. But most people I see, especially in Wakefield, I just think they're nowhere near that. It's as if they are absolutely comfortable being uncomfortable. They're really happy being unhappy. And they're quite healthy with the fact they're unhealthy. It staggers me. And it's a frustration because I think, do you realise how simple some of the changes you could make are to improve the quality of your life? And then when people sort of kick back on it almost, as if to say, you're talking bollocks, we're not going to listen. I just think, what's happening in our minds that people can't see? Change sometimes has to happen. Most people right now listening to this podcast, I guarantee, if they're honest, and I mean being honest, not just, blah, blah, blah. I'm saying, right now, is there some element of your life that could be better? And most people will say yes to that. And I'm sure in many cases more than just one. Okay, so you recognise something could be better. The only way to make it better is to change something. Because, as a wise man once said, if you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always got. You cannot have a change in outcome unless you have a change in the circumstances to create that outcome. And it's almost pains me. I suppose this morning I did have this thing about Dan. I thought, that young man had his life ahead of him. He was a very fit fella. He was an incredibly good cricketer, annoyingly good looking. He just had this concept of, to the outside world, a very perfect life. And he would have probably said it was perfect life. Then one day he wakes up to the fact he's got cancer, and the number of, 18 months after, he's no longer with us. And I just thought, when people like that get hit by something like this, and, lovely man, you just think to yourself, why do we not value our health and our well-being more? Why have people in this place of thinking that it's almost funny to do things which we know are hurting ourselves? The amount of dumb shit I see on Facebook of people drinking and almost making it funny that they're pissed.
What about that one I was telling you about, which was an eating challenge?
Well, I mean, that's again, it's silly. The challenge that you told me about was that they took this very small, skinny person with a big person and made them eat who could eat the most fish and chips.
Male versus whale, it's called.
And this has become a thing on a programme somewhere. Yeah. And the reality is now, we have people dying in other parts of the world through not having enough food, and we're trying to cram as much shit down our neck as possible and call it entertainment. So you get into a level here now where it's not just change that we have to look at. We have to look at why we aren't encouraging and supporting change in a more positive way. If you are fearing change in something, you simply have to ask yourself this question. If you don't change it, what will happen? So back to where I was with my drinking in 2014, I made a decision on that day. I looked to the future and thought, if I don't stop doing this,
what is the consequence?
In 12 months' time, I will not be here. I think it would have been a lot less than that.
Yeah.
So you look at I think it was getting very bad. I think it would have been 2 or 3 more months, and I'm good. It either through just kill yourself with drink, or inadvertently doing it by going outside drunk off license and getting knocked over. There's 100 anyway. I made that decision. I thought that's what the actions is. But if I don't do anything, this is what will happen. If I do change, what could happen? And that's how you have to look at change. Change is painful because you're only looking at what might happen, how it might be difficult. But I think you came up with a great point earlier on, which was you've got to look at what that change could look like.
Instead of feeling deprived,
look like you're working towards something. So every day now, I can probably feel that I have much better things to do on a morning when it's raining and cold and it's snowing than going out running. But I don't look at that. Yes, I could always. What I'm saying is I could find an excuse really easy not to go out. It's raining, it's wet, it's cold. But what I do is I look ahead. I look ahead to how I'll feel when that change of being fitter comes in place. I have the element of fitness I want to achieve by the end of this year, and I will get there if I follow your plan. Then you've got to break it down. What change are you going to make? How do you make that change comfortably? So if, let's say, and it's always easy to talk about weight because weight is something everybody gets and it's a very easy metaphor to use. If you want to lose, 4 stone in weight, that's a lot of weight. And what people do is they get to a pain, but it becomes painful. I want to change. They push themselves to change it, and then they try for 2 months and give up because they've tried too much too fast. If you push your change out, so instead of saying, actually, I could lose 4 months in 12 months.
4 months?
Like 4 stone in 12 months, that's more doable. To lose 4 stone in 4 months is very difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, nothing's that impossible. But fearing change is what holds us back. And then what you do is by letting that fear of change hold you back, you're slipping back anyway. You're becoming worse in whatever it is that you're trying to change. So if you're putting off starting a diet because you fear the diet, all you're doing by eating the same way you were doing now is putting more weight on. You're making the problem bigger. We have to start to look now and question and really people need to ask themselves, is my actions taking me near where I want to be or taking them further away? You're only ever doing one of 2 things. Am I going towards something and away from something? And that fear allows people to stay somewhere. And sometimes you run out of time. I know people that didn't give up doing things that were bad for them. And in the end, they died because the thing clipped them. Food and alcohol, I know people have done both of that. What I would like to do as we get to the end of this podcast is start to look at some simple tips, maybe a couple each, around what we would say to somebody who is fearing change. So Do you want to go first, Susan?
See, you've just thrown something on me.
You can
again.
repeat what you've repeated earlier, which I think were good advice.
Which was? Yes, start with the end in mind. Is that a bit of a cliche?
Well, explain it.
Start with the end in mind. So, for example, I have this little story that I'm at my 90th birthday party, and what I look like, how I feel, what's going on around me, and that steers me, that gives me the direction. That helps me make decisions on a daily basis.
And changes you need to make.
Yeah, if I do this, will I get to 90 and be healthy? You know, I mean, not everything's written in stone. Or will I go backwards? So start with something, even if it's something like in 12 months' time, I am going to be doing this, I'm going to look like that, I'm going to feel like this. And then every time you have to make a decision, is it taking you towards that? So start with the end in mind. That's one thing I find helpful. And, did you say two?
Have you got another one?
The other one is, don't expect things to change, changes that you implement to go overnight. You know, look at it, it's a bit of a long burn, especially if you're changing values or opinions or you're needing to find out some more knowledge. Don't put a lot of pressure. Don't judge yourself if you haven't done exactly what you wanted to do in a very short period of time. You know, don't allow yourself 15 years, but allow yourself a reasonable... So make whatever it is that you want to do realistic. You know, has somebody done it? Can it be done?
Okay, so that's your two top tips. Look to what you'll be when you get what the change is going to give you. Start with the end in mind and take your time and allow yourself time. Excellent. My top tips, two of them, would be firstly, expect some uncomfortableness in the initial stages of change. I can't sugarcoat this for you, and I can't make this easy to accept. You have to accept it's going to be uncomfortable, because anything that's changed generally will have some uncomfortable feeling around it, but that will pass, and it will never be as uncomfortable as you think. So expect it. Anything you're doing in life, if you expect the fact it's going to be difficult to be there, you'll not be disappointed in most cases, but it will not be as difficult as you thought. So expect some uncomfortableness in the initial stages of change. The second thing I would say about change is, do not be put off making changes by other people. At the end of the day, for you to be the best version of yourself, for you to be really happy in your own life, and for you to contribute most to not just your own life, but those around you and close to you, you need to step up and do things you know are right. So don't be held back by making changes because of what other people may think. There are people, when you change, they'll go one of two ways. They'll support you or they'll ridicule you. The people that support you are the people you should have in your life. The people that ridicule you, you really have to question whether they should really be part of your social circle anyway. Small caveat with that. Some of those people don't agree might be your family. And if that is the case, that is difficult to manage, but not impossible. You have to agree to disagree, or you've got to avoid spending time with those people. Because people's opinions do hold people back. Don't allow it to hold you back. You have one job and one job alone. Whoever's listening to this, whoever you are, I'm talking to you. You have the job to be the best version of yourself you can be. And I can guarantee this. If you start to make the changes you need in your life, as Sue says, start with the end in mind, take your time, expect that little bit of resistance, and expect the fact a few people around you might not be that happy, and don't let that hold you back. If you do that, not only will you achieve what you think you can achieve, you'll achieve a way, way great deal more. Change, just as certain as death and taxes. There you go. Enjoy that one, Sue.
Did actually.
Have we got everything across there? Anyway, we thought we could most things there. A bit about change for you.
We don't do bad to say that we don't really take any notes.
I didn't want to make notes there. I wanted this one to be something that came out a little bit more kind of fluidly today. Right. Well, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, hang on a minute here. Let's just roll this back. You introduced it. You should do the outro as well.
Well, I'll do my best.
Go for it. Your best is always good enough. Don't fear the change.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, you can give us a 5-star rating. And if you want to know more, you can visit us on our website, which is better247.com, or if you want something more specific around yoga, nutrition, you can look at my website, susancowlishaw.com, or if you're interested in what Gareth has to say and you want to know a little bit more, he has his own website, garethboot.com. So for now, thank you very much for listening, and it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. Thank you. Well done, Sue. Thanks for listening. Take care.